Are you recording, Jeff? You should record whatever we say in the beginning, too. Yeah,
I
no,
mean,
I'm
look, I
saying,
don't know how
I'm
any of this
saying,
podcasting works.
I'm saying that I think it wouldn't be bad to have it at the beginning of that podcast, too.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. Yeah.
Jeff and
Okay,
I
I
were
didn't know
silly,
if
and
you
Sam
were.
was actually trying to make an important point.
Yeah, I meant, they're saying no audio from you, Jeff. But I was saying, what I meant was don't, let's not talk about this just on the stream and then record the podcasts as a separate,
Right.
like just record from the beginning and I'll edit it so that it's, even though it'll seem dated if somebody listens to it 2 years from now, it's worth it to leave it on there.
For whatever reason, it happens a lot lately. Okay, now I have audio. You can hear me now. I know you can. Don't pretend you can't.
Yay! That's definitely what he said.
They couldn't hear what he actually said.
That's right. I was giving away all the secrets of the show and wanted to keep it secret. So you only got to hear one side of the conversation.
That's right.
That's right.
That's right.
The first time I saw the Silver Tree, the user that last said something, the last time I saw that screen name in the chat, I missed the S and thought it was the liver tree, and I'm like, that's weird. What is what is the liver tree?
Excellent.
So welcome, liver tree.
Can I call you that from now on, Carl?
Is that someone you know?
Yeah, I DM'd a game for them on stream last summer, I guess.
Very good. So we're going to get started here in a bit, here, folks in the chat. And this is Behind the DM Screen. If you're not familiar with the Tome Show's Behind the DM Screen show, it's just three DMs sort of chatting about their games, what have they done in the last month, and then if there's time at the end, seeking help, inspiration, whatever they need to sort of make their world more fun. I've been eager to do prep for my game this week, and then realize, oh yeah, I don't want to brainstorm all this stuff on my own. I wanted to ask you guys about it. So Eugenio is filling in for Mike Shea, who normally is our third host. But he's got a Kickstarter going on and just sort of needs all of his mental bandwidth to keep that going full steam ahead. So Eugenio has decided to fill in for him. So it's an upgrade, really.
Oh, well. Do you know what's funny, though? I have been Mike Shea adjacent more times than I can count at this point. Like, just missing him at events and filling in for him in a couple of different things and, like, being a proxy in conversation. It's actually, like, I'm trying to think if we've ever actually met face-to-face. I think we came very close at a restaurant in Indianapolis 2 years ago, and that's, like, the closest we've been.
So the lesson is, Sam, anytime you need a break, Eugenio can fill in for you, and he can stream with Mike.
There you go. The world that might cause the singularity, though. I don't know. We haven't had a chance to test it, so who's to say?
It's a little bit like
at this point, I would welcome that.
No shit. Sorry, I don't.
I'll beep it. It's fine.
Great.
It's a little bit like during the 4th edition days, and I've retold this story recently. Actually, the Thaddeus was it 4 Geeks 4E thing, where you all would go around at the end of every recording and talk about what you've been doing in the last week or whatever, and inevitably one of you was a guest on the Tome Show. except Thad. Thad was never the guest on the Tome Show. And he would curse me, Jeff Greiner, right? And we made T-shirts about it and everything. I loved Thad, and I loved Thad then. It wasn't intentional. It just sort of never happened. And then that started happening, and I was like, well, now I can have him on, right? It's a thing.
Obviously.
And then eventually we're like, all right, it's the big time. Like, and he was on like one time, and it was the mind-blowing thing that we finally broke the streak and had Thad on. So. I might have to chat with him and see if I can get him to come back on an episode someday. I know he's around and doing stuff. I bumped into him at Gen Con back before grad school made me stop going to Gen Con. So
he's still around. I still see him post on Facebook and Twitter occasionally.
Yeah. So, I know he's still around and he's still doing stuff. He was doing something back then when I saw him at Gen Con. He was doing something with, was it Penny Arcade maybe?
I don't remember exactly.
Doing something with those guys. He was doing some media things with those guys.
He's always got some geek stuff going. Yeah. So yeah, he's good. He's good people.
All right. Well, good enough. Should we go ahead and get started? I always have for the behind the scenes here. I always have my very elaborate script for behind the screen. This is really the script. This is just my summary of my own game, so I can remember what I want to talk about. Yep. Exactly right.
Here's my notes.
Yeah, and I still won't talk about most of what's on here. So
I've done a lot in the last month. I realized as I was going through this, and I'm like, holy buckets. All right. I will. Oh, I don't have to start the stream, but I'll start recording the audio for the podcast, and then we'll get started. So now the audio is recording, and the stream is there and hanging out with us, and hopefully enjoying all of our pre-recording patters.
If they haven't
pre-recording, this is the first 8 minutes of every episode of my podcast.
Yeah, right.
And I'll tell you what, I always say the video on Twitch just gets exported straight to YouTube, no editing, nothing, right? So it'll live forever.
Good.
Yeah. All right. Are we ready to get going?
Yeah.
All right. So this is Behind the DM Screen. It is June of 2020. We are 3 DMs helping each other out. I am Jeff Greiner. We have with us, as usual, Sam Dillon. DM Samuel, say hello.
Hello.
And we do not have our usual Mike Shea. He is running a Kickstarter this month and using all of his mental bandwidth on that and the fact that I think the world is on fire, and just trying to survive. So we let him take a break, and we upgraded the show this month. So we have Eugenio Vargas, DM Jazzy Hands, with us. Welcome, sir.
Hey. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and I think it's worth acknowledging that it is June 2020, and I don't know when people will be watching this on when it's on YouTube, or when they'll be hearing the audio or whatever. But the world is pretty much on fire at this point. Between the pandemic and mass protests and what have you from the killing of George Floyd in Minneapolis, which was it just a week ago? It feels like months, but
time is a flat circle.
Absolutely. Fairly recently, and so there's a lot going on, and I think it's worth acknowledging that, and I think it's worth saying, like, yes, we are doing sort of a silly gaming podcast thing, right? And we recognize that that's what it is. But we're not trying to minimize the seriousness of the issues in the world right now. We are trying to bring some form of reprieve to anybody who might need that, including ourselves, right? And to keep our mental health strong while we're living in the world that we're living in. Is that fair to say, gentlemen?
Yeah, absolutely. We've thought a lot about this with my show. We decided to not release an episode this week, but I did earlier today record 2 episodes. So, people can choose how much bandwidth they have to affect change and be out there and protest and make donations and speak up, and then how much of their brain space they need to use for stuff like this. And I can't fault anybody for needing to take a break. And I know that it feels super dire because it is, but it's going to be a long game. And, as long as by taking part in something like this, we are not taking away from what we can do to help. I really can't stress enough, how valuable taking some time for yourself will be right now.
Yeah, I really feel like in terms of stress relief and trying to get your mind off of the horrible things that have happened and the wonderful things that are happening. I think unfortunately it's a mix of both, and the push for permanent change is a very strong one right now, and I think everyone on this recording right now support that. I certainly support it. I think that it's very important, all the work that's being done, all the people who are putting their own lives and livelihoods in danger. I have much respect for that. And I really feel like, though, there's also moments when you have to sort of separate from that and say, okay, I need some downtime. I need some breathing room. I need some stress relief. Otherwise, you're going to ruin your health. You're going to ruin your mental health, your physical health, like all of those things. It's a complicated thing, right? Because life is complicated, and I think it's important enough that we can move on and not feel bad about doing a sort of a podcast about stupid games, right? Like I don't feel bad about it, right? And I don't think I understand if someone doesn't thinks there should be more that we're doing right now or something different that we're doing. I fully understand that, but I feel like providing some sort of stress relief is also it's a good thing to do. So that's kind of it's rough. I think as long as everybody's doing what they can do in order to support the cause, right. and I think we all are. We talked about it sort of before the stream, so
yeah, that's right. Yep. That's right.
So with that sort of said and explained, I guess, just so people sort of know where our heads are on this issue at the time, let's get into it. Like I said, we each talk about our games, we help each other out with things, and we always rotate the order, and it's my turn. I get to go first. So, and that's fine. I have and I always set a 15-minute clock. And we always ignore it and then just keep going anyway. So.
I admire that tenacity to tradition, though, like holding fast.
Well, at least it helps, because we have 15 minutes on the clock with times 3 people. If we all go over that 45 minutes, quickly turns into the hour-ish, and then we're good to go. And right. If it doesn't...
Well, and I appreciate that everyone but Mike starts feeling guilty after 15 minutes.
And ultimately, if we do finish up early... we always have an opportunity to answer questions. Sometimes we'll get emails or tweets from people or whatever, and we'll talk about other people's games and what have you. So, yes, 15 minutes. And I'm already 50 seconds into my 15 minutes, and I have a lot to talk about. Since I've moved and started with my new game group here in Indiana, we meet weekly now, as opposed to my last group that met every other week, and sometimes not even that because life. But now we meet weekly, and everybody's really into it, and it's every Friday night, and people sort of see it as a great sort of gateway into their week and whatever. But that means that when we last chatted, what was it, last month, obviously, I had talked about the very introduction into Curse of Strahd in my campaign, and how that introduction was a little bit... It didn't have the sort of bam impact that I wanted it to have, and so I was a little worried about the buy-in into Curse of Strahd. Turns out that has not been a problem at all. Like they are bought in, they are creeped out at all the things they're supposed to be creeped out at. Like they are, like it is going gangbusters. And so we've done a lot though. Like they did the whole Village of Barovia thing. They met Mad Mary and was like, hey, my daughter's missing, who I was kind of hiding up in the attic for 16 years or whatever. And so I laid that foundation. And I, since we're on Roll20, I open every session. There's like a landing page that I've created, and I track what their current goals are. So before every session, they can be like, oh yeah, this person asked us to do that, and that we're kind of doing that for these people and whatever. And so that sort of Mad Mary is looking for her daughter Gertrude or Gertruda or whatever her name is. Will be there for a long time. Those people who know Curse of Strahd know that it's probably going to be a long time before they find her, right? She is not in an easy to get to spot. And they met I forget her name, but the hag that's selling the dream pastries.
Morgantha.
Yeah, Morgantha. The paladin of the group has gotten into the habit of using divine sense like regularly. Right? And so he's like, Morgantha, what's going on? She's obviously some sort of creepy undead working for Strahd, right? That's got to be what's going on. And then he turns on divine sense like, fiend? What? Like that? So they just they talked to her and whatever, and then went on their way, because they didn't know that she was doing anything. One of them actually bought a dream pastry and gave it to somebody else, didn't use it, right? Gave it to Ismark, actually. So, and then they ditched town and left Ismark with his new addiction. And I brought with them in the mist. So I've had a regular, because we started with Dragon Heist, right? And so I had Gaxley, what's his name, the newspaper guy from the Waterdeep Wazoo. I've had him writing a Wazoo one-page newsletter every week, right? And they love it. And it's sort of like what's going on in the world, and they can kind of see some of the consequences of their actions, but they can also see that the world is turning without them. Well, he, and in fact, the entirety of Trollskull Manor and all of their employees got sucked into the mist and are in Barovia as well. And so now he's wandering Barovia trying to figure out what's going on. And he was like, it was weird. After they left the village of Barovia, he was like, it's weird. I saw this old lady wandering the streets trying to sell these pastries, and she had this bag with her that kept wriggling and moving, and I don't know what was going on. But it was too late, right? They'd already moved on, so they'll get to see the consequences of that, I guess, later. And that's just my introduction, right? They went to the crossroads, and they were appropriately creeped out by the crossroads with the gallows, and one of them sees herself hanging in the gallows. Actually, I had two of the characters see themselves hanging in the gallows, and I specifically tied it to the fortune-telling card reading. So the idea was every character had some connection to one of the things that was being read, right? The paladin is connected to the Sun Sword, because the Sun Sword is actually his mother's ancient blade. He's an Asimar. His mother was a Celestial. She got trapped in Barovia, but her sword is still there, and she was a Celestial in service to Lathander, it turns out, right? So that all ties together, and that makes sense. So it's all stuff like that I tied. Each one is connected to somebody. Even the ally that's going to help him take down Strahd. One of my characters is a Dusk Elf woman from Barovia who escaped as a child and thus wasn't killed when all the women of the Dusk Elves were slaughtered, and has now returned. And the person who helped her escape was Esmeralda, who is the ally, right? And so I've made all these sort of connections and what have you, and I'm really looking forward to that. But then I got to the end, and it's like, well, but nobody's really connected to the story of Strahd, and the location of where they're going to find him isn't really connected to anybody. But I can sort of weave a little prophetic poetry around it and connect it to either one of these two characters. And so when they got to the crossroads, both of them saw themselves hanging. And the card was related to some of that. I don't remember exactly what card it was. I don't know if it was maybe the death card or whatever, right? And so now that hanging on the gallows made more sense and all that. And so, anyway, they were properly creeped out by the gallows. They were properly creeped out or enjoyed the sort of card reading. And I actually had the Tome of Strahd. I chose to just put it in the Vistani camp, right? So I could get that started right away. And I'm using the interactive Tome of Strahd product that I reviewed in a recent episode, actually, from DM's Guild. And so the idea of that is because I wanted them to be able to have some of the backstory for what's going on as they were, going out and seeing things. So the way the interactive tome works is you open it up and you decipher a chapter and then mists pour out of it and suck you in, and then you have like a flashback scene where you're back interacting with, in this case in the epilogue or in the prologue, it's little like a 12-year-old Strahd angry that his dad doesn't care much about him, and Rahadin is his sword trainer, and it's whatever. It builds a little sympathy for Strahd, right? And then recently, actually the last session, they unlocked the character who has it unlocked the first chapter, and it sucks you in, and it's one of the first big battles as they try to conquer, as Strahd tries to conquer Barovia, right? And it's this battle against the Knights of the Silver Dragon at Argen Vostholt, right? And so they get to participate in the battle, and some of them get to hang back and help protect Strahd, and then Strahd is mortally wounded, and the Vistani come in and protect him and shield him, and that sort of explains their relationship. And then they get to see the giant silver dragon swoop up out of the keep at the very end, and the scene ends, right? And they're brought back to their own world and what have you. And so that's going really well as well. They're really struggling with wait, are we actually back in time? Like, if we killed Strahd as a kid, like, would it matter? And like, when we are injured, like, it still hurts us when we come back, and we can like bring things with us. So they have no idea what's going on. And honestly, the book is the product is set up that like they're not supposed, like, it could, maybe they are back in time, maybe they're not. However you want to do it, right? So yeah, so that's going really well. After the card reading, they went back to the crossroads, and they had a hunch that maybe the holy symbol was there, and it was. And they started digging around, and they dug around, and found the holy symbol in a grave that had a name on it that one of the characters recognized, but none of the rest of the characters knew who it was, right? And so I made that one of my opening questions. I do an opening question every session, just to get them a little in the headspace and role-playing a little bit and thinking about their backgrounds a little bit. And so that was fun. But at the same time, when they got to the crossroads, they showed up, and Van Richten was there, standing on the gallows, fighting off a bunch of vampire spawn, right? And so they're introduced to Van Richten, except it turns out it's not actually Van Richten. It's Strahd in the form of Van Richten. So of course he beats the vampire spawn by himself, and they all go running away. And then he's like, well, I've got this wagon, and you're going in the same direction I am. Why don't you hop on, and I'll give you a ride, and we can talk, and we can ask each other. And so now Strahd knows a bunch about him, right? And one of the characters has a journal that was like Van Richten's great-grandmother, who was back in Barovia generations ago, like, that they found out in the Forgotten Realms. They found this journal. And fake Van Richten was like, oh, I would love to see my grandmother's journal. How about this? You let me borrow that journal. I'll let you borrow my journal with all my notes on Strahd. And then next time we see each other, we'll exchange back, right? Right, and so they exchange, and now Strahd's got the journal, right? He's got all the information. They don't have it. Plus, now he has a personal item he can use for scrying against them, right? So that went really well. Then they got to Vallaki. They met Rictavio, and after a few sessions, eventually figured out that Rictavio was Van Richten, and then they're like, oh crap, like they figured out that I don't know that they know that it was Strahd himself, but they at least know that it was a minion of Strahd, somebody posing as Van Richten, because Van Richten's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I wasn't there. I've been in town the whole time, right? I don't know who you are. None of this makes sense to me. They found the tiger, the saber-toothed tiger in the wagon. They were given the quest for the bones of San Andrel, and they've actually completed it. They're higher level than Curse of Strahd actually recommends, so the encounter with the vampire spawn wasn't as deadly as it could have been. I actually wanted to realize I missed some opportunities to introduce Strahd in a way that they would have recognized earlier, and so I wanted to get that in. And so the first night they were in the Blue Water Inn, which is the inn that they stay at in Vallaki, they're awakened in the middle of the night by ravens going crazy, like caw, 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 whatever, right? They don't know what's going on, but they're all woken up, and then they hear a voice, Tatiana, come to me, right? And Irina, who had been charmed the day before when they were on the wagon with Van Richten, okay, sure, just starts wandering out towards him, right? And they're running out trying to stop her, and they're fighting off all the zombies that he brought with him, and they're like, okay, we've whittled the zombies down, and we're gonna start beating up on Strahd, and then but they also managed to like pin down Irina, and so Strahd just sort of takes off and turns into bats and flies away, and they're like, aha, we chased off Strahd, and I'm like, yeah, that's what happened, right? You totally beat Strahd. You scared him away, right? And so that went really well. They went out to the Dusk Elf Vistani encampment, which the one character has some connections to because he is a Dusk Elf, right? And one of the characters who has been hearing whispers from one of the Dark Powers from before they even got to Barovia. Actually, two of the characters have been hearing whispers from Barovia before they got here. But one of them hears mention in the Vistani camp of the Amber Temple, because one of the Vistani leaders wants to go to the Amber Temple, and she's heard of the Amber Temple. She's asked other people about it, but nobody knows what she's talking about. Right now, she's like, "Wait, this guy knows about the Amber Temple? Yeah, whatever he wants, we're doing that." Right? Yeah, so she's on board, even though they're all convinced the Vistani are horrible and evil because they've been told by multiple people that they work for Strahd. But she's still on board. And then they've also got the search for was it Annabelle or Arabelle or whatever, the Vistani's daughter who's gone missing, they'll find out where she is, in theory, later on. They did, when they went into, because one of the questions I have deals with, I want to talk, I haven't gotten much into Wallachian politics at all, and there's a little bit of that going on, right? The Burgomaster is doing his weekly or whatever festivals. Fiona Vacher wants to overthrow him and take over and be running things. I've hinted at all of that, but they haven't actually met any of those people or even their agents at this point. They've been to Blinsky's and the toy maker and seen all of that, the toys and the weird arena toy that's there, and so they've already got it out for Ezek, who Blinsky tells him was the person who wants the arena toys. But I'm not sure if I want to actually how I want to play that out. If Ezek is going to be a little more sympathetic or not. So I really want to talk a little bit about. Oh, my volume is down, but my timer went off. I want to talk a little bit about how to infuse that, how to maybe run the Festival of Blazing Suns, which is coming up soon. And I had another question if there's time, but I guess if we don't deal with it until next month, I guess we can wait. But since we're already over time, so Sam, I don't think you've run Curse of Strahd because I'm fairly familiar with what you've been running because we talk about it every month.
The last time I ran I6, the actual Ravenloft module, like decades ago. So right. Yeah, it's been.
Oh yeah, I used to run that every year at Halloween. It was a yearly tradition. But yeah. Henny.
But yeah, no, I have not read run the 5th edition Curse of Strahd. I have read it, but I never read it.
Eugenio, have you run it? Based on your reactions,
so I'm actually running it. I'm running it right now, and up until my group also we're also using the interactive tome of Strahd. We also had the tome at Sarapul, nice. At the Vistani encampment outside of Barovia. So many of the things that you were talking, I was just laughing because it could be the same game. You're a little further along than we are. But yeah, so I've run it once before, played in it once, and now I'm running it a second
time. So you have some insight. How did Vallaki run for you, or either as a player or a DM? How did the whole political situation play out for you? Talk to me about that.
I think Vallaki is really hard because I think Vallaki can be this sort of huge setting place where there is all of these politics and there's so many threads that can go around here or around there in Vallaki. So if you're gonna sort of do the whole thing, and include all of the stuff about the festival, which I think you should because I think it's fun and super interesting.
And the players have said they want to stick around for the festival, so.
At
first I was like, I don't know if I'll actually run the festival or not, and then they're like, oh no, you definitely. I think we should stick around to the festival. I'm like, all right, now I got to figure out how to run the festival.
So yeah, I think as you're sort of planning to do all of that, you just sort of have to keep an eye on like all of the different threads that are happening at once. I do have a question for you, and it's been a while because my group just got to Vallaki, but as I recall, sort of one of the instigating incidents of the festival can be the Rictavio's tiger getting loose, right? So if they've already found is that going to be a problem for you? Are we going to be able to look at it the way that the book lays it out?
I think it'll be okay. So they're aware of the tiger because one of them, the rogue of the group, actually cast invisibility on herself and followed Rictavio when he was out feeding his horse and feeding the tiger, right? And so he saw Rictavio feed the tiger, then snuck up to see what was going on. Saw, a flash of orange fur in the moonlight and a little Vistani dressed doll, and so they asked him about it. It's like, oh yeah, I've totally been training that tiger to kill Vistani because they work for Strahd and screw them, right?
God.
So
cool.
Can I interrupt for a second and tell
Please.
you that Dan Dillon is in the chat, and he says that he thinks the festival is a great chance to show just how messed up things are in Vallaki now.
That's sort of exactly what I was going to say, but go ahead, Jeff.
That was sort of my thinking. I'm just fishing for inspiration on how messed up it's going to be and how to run that way. So
right. I mean, I'm delinquent in my prepping because I haven't looked at the festival again since the last time I ran it, so I'm running sort of off of a longer memory. But, if I remember correctly, like, the kids of Vallaki play a big part in, like, the procession part of the parade when they're bringing the big... And this is the Festival of the Sun, right? So they're, like, bringing the big wicker sun into the town square. So, like, really, like... I think it's all about the juxtaposition here, right? Because we very rarely, unless we're in a Vistani camp, we very rarely in Barovia get to see, like, joyful things or bright things or happy things. And that's exactly what the Baron is trying to do here in Vallaki. And so I think just really playing up that, like, all of these flowers and this big bright sun and all of these very gray, very dour children bringing it in, right? The other thing is, and this is definitely a taste thing, and like this is group to group, but one thing that I do remember the last time I ran the festival with a group was that I sort of encouraged them, and this was sort of a meta thing, but it proved useful if it's your style. I gave them a heads up that like there was going to be an event, right? And you're going to want, like, there's a good chance that you're going to want to interact with a lot of the things that I'm describing because they're going to be weird and messed up and they're going to make you have questions about what's happening. Let me get through some of it, right? Let me really actually set a scene before you jump at the very first, right? Like, thing that you see that you want to attack or that you want to grab or that you want to talk to, right? Because there are so many things going on that just, like, giving them a heads up that, like, this is a whole set piece thing was super helpful for me. What else can we talk about? I think
one of the other things I'm thinking that this is a good opportunity to also bring in the politics a little bit. So they've run into. I guess I said they haven't run into any agents of Fiona Vacher or the Burgomaster, but that's not true. They did run into Ernst. Which is Fiona Vacher's sort of agent, her spy who follows them around and whatever, right? And so they ran into him, and when the rogue character saw him following them around and noticed that he'd been around at several locations, her response was like, oh, I'm just going to walk up and ask him, hey, who are you and what are you doing? You know? And so it was a real, like, weird, like, she's super cheerful, and he's like, what are you doing in town? I'm just keeping an eye on people in town and whatever, right? He's like, oh, well, we killed some vampires last night. Like, she just laid it all out and was not subtle at all.
Sure.
And so that's going on a little bit. I'm wondering, I'm thinking that I might do both things at the same time, right? Bring in a little bit more of the politics while running it as well. Like, when they went to the coffin maker's shop in the Bones of St. Angel's quest or whatever, they were not kind to the coffin maker, right? They saw the coffin maker as completely complicit in putting the people of Vallaki in danger, stealing these bones, harboring undead, whatever. And so, like, one of them, like, just got mad at him and punched him in the face for a point of damage, right? Which, you know, he's a 4 hit point commoner, so he can't do much more than a point of damage. And then when they went upstairs to search around for the bones, not knowing there were vampire spawn up there yet, they're like, well, we need to make sure you don't, like, run off and cause trouble. So they forced him to get in one of his own coffins and nailed him in there, with the promise that we'll let him out, you know, we'll let you out on our way out or whatever, just to make sure you don't run away. And he's like, this is like horrible, right? So part of me is wondering, like, on one hand, he's afraid of the vampire spawn and Vasily von Holt, who they work for or whatever, right? On the other hand, like, part of me wants to have him go to the burgomaster and report them. And then the burgomaster, like, invites them to have a conversation and be like, hey, we need to talk, because we need to make sure that everybody knows that all will be well, right? Because that's my thing, and nailing people into coffins is not okay. And if you can't get on board, you got to get out of town, right? And to sort of lay some of that groundwork and see how they respond. And if it's not entirely favorable, then perhaps Fiona Vacher sort of reapproaches them and says, you know, hey, I know you've had some negative interaction with the burgomaster. Let me tell you about, you know, I'd like to help you deal with him. How about you do me a favor and, you know, maybe you go kill one of his agents like Isaac, or maybe we can plan an assassination of the burgomaster himself or whatever. And then that can play out during the festival, right? So that's sort of where my headspace is at now, but I haven't sort of laid it all out yet, so...
Yeah, I mean, the whole town is supposed to be present, right, at the festival, so you can sort of have any combination of headbutting NPCs or opportunities for them. And I think, you know, with all of that in mind, you know, maybe you don't need the saber-tooth tiger thing. I mean, if you really want to throw a wrench into things, but if they end up, and that actually, you know, I'm thinking about sort of what it would be like to run that festival without knowing that I have to deal with a saber-tooth tiger running through the town in 5 minutes. That actually might be great, right? If the festival becomes about, you know, like we said, showcasing just how stuff Vallaki is, but also giving the players a chance to further something that they've already come up with either the burgomaster or Fiona. Yeah, I think that's great.
Yeah, no, and actually I don't... Part of me is like, if it goes down the route of Fiona Vacher sort of tries to make a deal with them to assassinate the burgomaster at the festival, which she would totally be on board with, then it turns into a clash between the burgomaster and the guards and her cultists, and the PCs are somewhere in the middle, and then a saber-tooth tiger runs through it in the middle of the fight. Like, isn't interested in any of them, because none of them are Vistani, right? But just sort of suddenly a saber-tooth tiger bounds through town. You know? That could be fun.
That would definitely highlight the sort of alienness of the environment, right? Or of the realm that you're in, right? Like, just the what the hell, and you know, and it's not really interested. It's just moving through, and everybody else kind of, you know. But Dan Dillon came back with another comment. He said, "I kind of love the idea of having the whole town present for the festival, but it becomes clear very quickly that they're all there with plastered on smiles, with the guards' weapons at their backs. Another fun connection being, if you have a tiefling, an Aasimar, or any other planar adjacent character, the Lady Wachter is an instant fun flashpoint."
Yeah, and fun point, I have two Aasimar and a tiefling.
Right, So there's a lot of buttons and pulleys that you can be playing with in this case, right? It's just more, sounds like, just from hearing this conversation, it's more of a... it's more of a question of what you want to actually utilize from it, right?
The trick is that I need to get myself properly planned out and in the right headspace. Otherwise, it's gonna start rolling tomorrow night, and I'm gonna miss a beat, and it's gonna be problematic. Like my prep. Let me pull it out here. My prep since going online has been this, right? I've got my inspiration opening question at the top, and then it's just sort of a checklist of don't forget to introduce these points, right? So right now my prep for tomorrow looks like this, and that's it, right? It's the characters' names, and I don't have anything else down yet. So
I think that's exactly it, and I think that's something that you'll just have to have the time to do, but making sure that you know what you want out of it. Obviously, your players are going to change all of that, right? No DM's plan survives contact with players, but knowing what you intend to get out of it at least, because the other thing is like that festival with all of that going on has the potential to go south for the characters real quick if they person, right? Because they may be higher level, but like I know y'all have talked about this before, like action economy is king, and there are a lot of people in that town, and there are enough guards on the burgomaster's side, and the Watchers and her sort of people can be powerful enough in numbers that like if the party gets split up or they get cornered by a bunch of people, like it can go south real quick.
Right. There was yes, Steal Your Mind is pointing out it's 27 minutes in now. It's also like there's other areas that I think there's, because the interactive Tome of Strahd brings in some of the history of Barovia. There's a lot of other interesting history to bring in. Like one of the characters they meet in chapter 2 of the tome that they haven't really met yet, in some versions of Barovia, was buried in the Watcher's tomb, turned into a vampire and buried there as a vampire, and sealed in, and is theoretically still there, having gone mad and whatever, right? And I'm like, oh, I kind of want to play with that, just so when they do meet the character in the past, they're like, oh, crap, like we know where that story's going. There's a lot of fun things you can do there, but
that's the other thing that came to me was that like the festival also, at least in my experience, is often sort of the denouement of the Vallaki part of your story, because there's a non-zero chance that they're going to get run out of town, or that they're going to grab onto a hook that's going to take them out of town. So, and I know like the story in the book, and I assume, I don't know if this is how you've introduced it, but like it's happening in 3 days. But like you want to, for me, you want to make sure that you have given them a chance to get all of the things, or most of the things that they should get out of Vallaki, because it may be a while before they come back if things go south.
I think what is likely to happen is the festival will happen, and they'll still like go and pick up the wine shipment and come back, and
sure.
But who knows? Maybe they'll drop off Arena somewhere else, because clearly Vallaki's not a safe place, right? So yeah, a
great way to get them to Crest.
Yeah, we'll see, because the winery is actually not too far. It's actually, I think it's closer on the map to Crest than it is to Vallaki. So. All right, I have, as it has been pointed out from Steal Your Mind, I am like double my time here, which normally like we can all talk half an hour and have an hour-long episode, and I don't care. But bedtime's in 45 minutes, so and my wife will want to go to sleep and not have me come in and bother her after she's gone to bed. So, so I am officially ending my time. And we did have a good 5-minute chat at the beginning before we started, but. Before we pass it on to Sam, though, I do want to mention to folks that for the month of June, and I don't know when Samuel here will get this edited out, but for the month of June, the Tome Show has a contest that is being sponsored by Skull Splitter Dice. And actually, it's not just the month of June. We're going to have a contest from them every month for the next 4 months. And each one I'm going to run a little bit differently. They gave me the power to sort of run it the way I want, which is nice. But they're providing a big selection of dice and trays and cases, and there's metal dice and plastic dice and bundles, and like there's a lot of cool stuff in this bundle this time around. People should totally check it out. And if you want to check it out and enter this month, you go to Twitter and you look for the Tome Show's Twitter, which is the Tome Show. And there is a tweet there with instructions. You need to retweet it and comment in your retweet and answer to the question that's there. And that's all you need to do to get entered into the contest. So I want to thank Skull Splitter Dice for sponsoring us in this way. They approached me with this idea for a sponsorship, and I'm like, well, you know, I like the idea of a sponsorship that's primarily focused on giving stuff to our listeners. So here we are. Go out and get those dice. And thank you, Skull Splitter Dice, which I think I shouldn't be wrong, but I think their website is skullsplitterdice.com. So, Sam,
do you want me to check?
I was just thinking that. Should we check?
Are we all checking? Now, Sam?
It is skullsplitterdice.com.
And actually, skullsplitterdice.com/the tome sends you to a landing page that has a coupon code that gives you 15% off an order there. I think it's the tome.
Nice.
Is it the tome? Did you check that?
I did not check that part.
I'm checking it right now.
Closed it.
It's either the Tome or Tome Show, and I can't remember which one it is. They set up this landing page for us, but it has a coupon code. So if you want to go buy some dice, we've had several dice sponsors in recent years.
I believe it's Tome Show, because the Tome is not taking me anywhere.
That is what my browser says too. Yes, Tome Show. There is a coupon code there. You can get 15% off, and we've had several dice company sponsors on the show in recent years, and through each one of them, I have either been sent or I have used their sponsorship money to purchase metal dice from them, and I really like the Skull Splitter Dice ones. To give you a sense of why, for those in the stream, you can kind of see. These are two different sets that I bought, and this is the Skull Splitter one, and it's just ever so slightly larger. And I really like my D20, and just the D20s, not the other ones aren't, but I really like D20s that are just slightly larger than all the other dice, because that's the dice I'm using the most, and it's so easy to just grab, and whenever I need a D20. So, all right, now that we've given Sam a lot to edit.
Wizards of the Coast in their last release, the Laeral Silverhand's Guide to Exploring whatever the heck the name of that thing was. It was I don't have it, so but they made the dice, the D20s are bigger. They're larger.
They're real jumbo.
Normal. Yeah.
Here, I'll hold those up too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got a few dice like that, but not metal ones. I like my metal dice these days, so. If somebody would make me a real jumbo D20, although I saw, was it Wormwood recently, I saw got themselves like a baseball-sized tungsten D20. Like, that thing is so heavy and dense, like they were having fun messing with that. So.
Yeah.
That was hardcore.
That sounds like a weapon of mass destruction.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Sam, you have a strict 15 minutes.
Yeah, right. A strict 15
It is your turn to talk, so let's hear about your game. Go.
Okay, so I've got actually two games going right now. One I just had last night, so I'll talk about that first, and then I'll talk about my streamed game. So I run a game with a couple of youngsters. They are 14 and 16. That just happened this past month. They were previously 13 and 15. So they are aging, as we are all. But my point is they're relatively young. They're young kids, right? But since the pandemic, we haven't met very often. Of course, once the pandemic occurred, I know them because their mom is my colleague at work. So we haven't been at work since March 14th or something like that. So I haven't been able to have a actual in-person game with them since like March 22nd or something was the last time we had. But what I did was I opened up Fantasy Grounds and I retaught myself Fantasy Ground because I have a license from a long time ago and it's of course still active. And I got them to go on, and I spent some time last week. We met last Wednesday for the first time, and I taught them how to use Fantasy Grounds basically from the character point of view. So I put their characters in, I put their PCs in there because of course we're in my homebrew world. So there's a couple of, special different, and I didn't want to have them have to do that because they're actually not all that computer savvy. They're very active physically, so they're outside a lot and they read a lot, but their parents limit their time on a device. So they've had a lot of learning curve, by the way, because their school closed as well. So they went Zoom just like everybody else, right? So they've had a humongous learning curve for the past 2 months to try to get them up to speed because they didn't really know a lot about computers beforehand. So it was quite an interesting experience teaching them Fantasy Grounds last week. But they're young and they're really interested in it and they love D&D. So of course they picked it up like that, right? I mean, it's like it's nothing. So what I did though was in order to test out things. Now the game that I'm running there, this is only the third session of that game because we ended the last campaign. So this is only the third session of that game, and they're doing a sort of artifact hunting group kind of game. So excuse me. So they so that their job is to go find these artifacts. And of course, I'm putting story into it because in the last place they were at, they found an amulet with a weird symbol on it. So now of course they want to know what that is. So that's where the story is.
Ran Mike's Grindelroot campaign with, right? So is this the
that
same world then,
yes.
or are they? Because you talked about running them in the same world at one point.
Yeah, same world, different location, different time. So this way, eventually they're going to run across statues of their previous characters, right? Because their previous characters saved that whole mountain community, right? So that's going to happen. But yeah, they're not there right now. But so basically, they did a little bit of a dungeon crawl, but it's really interesting because in person they're very like, oh, I do this, right? Like I'm going to walk over there. I'm going to do this. Oh, I'm going to go do that. But when we're playing on the computer with Fantasy Grounds, they have a map and they've got tokens, but they're arguing with each other. No, don't go there. Oh no, we need to go over there. Oh no, we shouldn't do that. We should do this because they're sitting there next to each other, but I'm not in the same room. So they don't have like a the dynamic is very different. It's really funny actually. But what happened though is I told them after the last session, okay, you need to learn how to work together. You don't want to sit and argue between every room because you're just going to attract monsters, right? You're in a dungeon. For the same reason that you can't sleep you can't just decide, oh, we're going to camp right here, right? This isn't a video game. You don't just camp right where you are. And you also can't stand here and argue while you're standing at the door. All these creatures are going to hear you. So what happened was in between last week and this week, they actually, I think, paid attention to my advice a little bit. So they had some really good tactics this week, except when I put them in a small circular room with a well in the middle of it. And it had a passageway off of one end and a passageway off the other end. And all they needed to do was go through the room. But they decided they wanted to see if there was anything in that well. So they took a 10-foot pole and they poked down the well and they angered the water weird that was in the well. But now these are third level characters and there's 4 of them. Okay. It's 2 PCs and then they kind of have 2 helpers that are kind of, they're basically full characters, but really it's just like one of them's a cleric so that they have some healing and one of them is a ranger so that they have some ranged attacks. But instead of like realizing, oh, this thing's really tough, they all just ran up to the well and tried to tried to beat the thing down. So yeah, exactly. So other than that, so what's funny about that is that thing can pull them in and pull. So here's the thing: it's a CR3 character, a CR3 creature. A CR3 creature for 4 third level PCs should not be that difficult. But when you're standing around a well, and if it grabs onto you and you don't succeed in your attempt to escape, or you don't think about escaping because you think you're just going to kill the thing, right? It pulls you underwater, and now you're underwater, and all your attacks when you're submerged underwater are at disadvantage, and you're grappled, and the creature gets advantage on every attack against you. So suddenly you're in deep doo-doo. But here's the funny thing about it. One of them got pulled under. The other one pulled him out with an amazing natural 20 roll to try to yank him out, right? So I said, oh yeah, you completely pulled him out. You yanked him away. That was amazing. Then they stood there trying to fight it again instead of leaving. So another one got pulled under. So it's one of those, I remember moments like that when I was a young D&D player, and just you get like, oh, I can't believe you did that. I'm just going to stay here and kill this thing, when the better choice would have been, okay, just if you move 10 feet away from this well, it can't reach you and it can't leave the well. It's made of water. And it's funny because on one hand I was like, you don't realize, because at the end they said, oh, I can't believe we had such a problem with that creature. It's probably only a CR4 creature. And I said, yeah, it's really only a CR3. And they're like, oh, I can't believe we had such a hard time. And I said, well, this is actually a good way to show you how the environment and the size of the room and the choices that you make in terms of how close you are to your enemy, how that all matters. And they did things like they forgot to have the cleric cast bless, and they the one of them's a fighter, and so he has superiority dice, and he didn't want to use those for some reason. They just thought they could take that thing out real easy. And then when it became clear it was more difficult, he still chose not to use them until right at the very end. And it's sort of one of those, it was like they entered that room and suddenly all their great tactics, they had just used 2 or 3 rooms, for 2 or 3 rooms in a row before that, just went out the window. But I remember those days, right? I remember being 15 and doing the worst possible choice and not remembering things and getting all excited and just trying to beat down that thing that attacked me. And I can't believe that it hit me when my AC is so high, and it's a lot of fun. It's really fun to play with younger players that don't really have a lot of experience, but who really enjoy it, because it reminds me of when I first started playing. So other than all the other great things that come out of playing with young players, that's one of them that it reminded me of specifically yesterday.
Now you told them like what they could have done differently in that encounter, right?
So, yeah. Oh, yeah. And during the encounter, I even pointed things out to them. So like I said, you're grappled. So on your turn, you can attempt to escape. You can use your action to escape. Right. And they
I always find that's, and I think I agree. Like I'm in that headspace where I remember those days where you'd make those horrible things, but at the same time, like they'll tell that story for 20 years, of that fight.
Right. Oh yeah, they'll remember.
But at the same time, like now I find that I'm playing with more mature, experienced players, and I'm older and more experienced as well. I still sometimes default to, oh man, that was such a cool fight. Let me tell you where you messed up, and that totally breaks the immersion and is such a bad it's such a bad habit I'm trying to break myself.
Yeah.
So it's
I don't do that. I don't do that to my adult players. Like in my other game, I don't do that, and I don't. So for me, it's like I don't tell them what they missed. Right? Like that's one of the things. Even with the kids, if they fail to find some kind of secret door or some kind of treasure, I don't tell them, oh, you missed this. You had the opportunity to get this. No, that's not worth it, because that just makes them feel like, okay, now we're going to have to slow the game down and go like a teeny tiny crawl speed to make sure we hit everything because we feel bad that we didn't catch everything.
Or if you're pointing out,
I already know that they do that.
Or if you're pointing out bad tactics, then it encourages sort of min-maxing and focusing on that rather than the role play. No, you're you're absolutely right.
And that's
I'm
not what I
definitely better at it than I used to be. But I still every now and then it's like, oh man, this thing was really cool and it didn't take place and I kind of want to talk about it, so I still make the mistake of breaking that decision,
The boys are also, they're very interested in how do they do it better. Like like not in terms of min-max. They don't mean it that way. They mean, what was I supposed to know about that? Like, is there a way I could have done something different? And then I'm honest with them. I'll tell them, like one time they were in a room. Consequently, it happened to also have a well, although this was a dry well. And one of them went and he stuck his head. He like leaned way over the well to see if he could see down to the bottom. There's a spider in there.
Sir.
Yeah. And so, but the thing was, there were also spider webs on the ceiling, but they didn't look around before he walked up and stuck his head. I mean, like a DC-5, like if he had said, I look up, I would have just said, don't even roll. You see spider webs. Like, you don't even need to roll perception. You see them. And then they would have been like, oh, okay, we're on guard. We know there's probably a spider in here. But instead, he just went and, stuck his head in a right. So that sort of thing, when they do something like that at the end of it, if they say, oh, how could that have been better or whatever, I just tell them right out, well, if you were adventurers in this world, right? I don't tell them, oh, you're stupid kids, you don't know how to play.
Right.
It's not that at all. I tell them if you were adventurers in the world, okay, when you were going into that room, you would be looking at everything because it's very dangerous for you. So you're going to be hyper vigilant about look at the floor, look at the ceiling, look at the walls.
Yeah,
right? Is anything in there?
And I think it's extra. It's extra sort of okay or good to do that kind of stuff with them because they're younger and they're learning the game. Like when I ran my middle school after school group, like I never even thought about it. Like, of course I would talk about them with that kind of stuff, right? And help them pick up things and learn the game a little bit more. And if they had questions, hey, I didn't do this or I did this, what would have happened if I'd done that? Then I would talk it through with them because they're figuring it out, right?
Right.
But that's a different goal than a regular game with an adult group and whatever.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah, it's a way different goal. And so now we can actually talk about my other group, my quote adult group as you're calling it. So that's my D&Debreif group, and we run every other Sunday. So we didn't have a game we had a game this Sunday before, and they have finally after almost 12 full months, they have finally made it to Calport, which is the main city that they were trying to go to.
I just listened
from the very beginning.
I just listened to like 3 episodes today, and they're just now negotiating possible terms for the duel with Sharkface. So.
Yeah. So another episode just released yesterday, although we didn't announce it because of all the stuff going on, but another episode released, and it's a big battle. So if you listen to that podcast, at the beginning, I tell you, look, this is an hour and a half of combat. So if you want to skip the combat, just go to an hour and a half in. And then there's another 20 minutes of game, and then there's a debrief at the end of that episode. But it's a really huge, enormous combat. And I think I talked about it last time. But basically, it's on a ship, and it has these storm wyverns, and it's a really huge, fun combat. It was really fun to run, and I think the players had a lot of fun. And then after that, they end up deciding to actually make their way to Calport. So they make their way to Calport, and they finally get to Calport. And they did some things on the way to Calport, and they learned some information. And they get to Calport, and they find that the ship that came from their original town, Trastenfind, that island got overrun with goblins. They had learned this a few sessions ago, and that ship was trying to get to Calport. So that ship got to Calport, but they had a sick person with them. Oh. And now this is a person who they met in like the second session, right? So I didn't model this on the current pandemic in the world. This was a part of the game before the whole pandemic thing happened. But that sick person, Lucanius, who was he was turning into a crab man. They took him to the church, to the temple of Nadinawi on their island, Trastenfin. But then that island got overrun while they were away doing other stuff. So they learned from a message spell. Imran used a message spell to talk to her father and learned that everybody from that town and from that island is on some ships going to Cowport because their entire island got overrun.
Right.
So when they got to Cowport said, you have sick people, you have to go over here to this quarantine area because we don't want you to get our people sick. Meanwhile, Imran thinks she has discovered a way to maybe resolve. So here's what happened. And Jeff, you haven't heard this yet in the episode because it has not been released yet. It's going to be in the next one that gets released in podcast form. But here's what happened. They figured out that so they got after the battle on the ship. They had made friends with Sharkface, okay? And he said, I want you to come see my crew. And they go down there, and all of this crew is all sick, and they're sort of half transformed. And he explains why and what kind of deal was made and all this kind of stuff. Or he explains how it happened, not why. He doesn't really know why. But they figure out a way to try to turn, with some combination of spells and some different abilities, they turn some of these blue goblins, they try to make them healthy, and 2 of these blue goblins transform into halflings. And they're halflings from a different time period. And then they transform a couple more, and it's a couple of humans from a different time period. And they figure out, the big reveal from that episode, which now, Jeff, I'm spoiling for you, is that it turns out something's going on. So when someone dies, their soul travels and it gets judged, and it gets not judged but measured, that's the term, by the Raven Queen. And until it gets measured by the Raven Queen, it rests in the place called the Soul Spire. And the Soul Spire, it turns out, one of the ways that the main villain of this game is affecting the world, part of what he's doing is he's stealing. Now, this is kind of a spoiler because my players aren't sure. So if you're a player of mine, stop listening right now. He's found a way to siphon souls out of the Threefold Lake, which is what the Soul Spire. So the Soul Spire holds the souls. It empties into a place called the Threefold Lake, which is a planar location, and then and in the Threefold Lake, then there's a whole bunch of stuff going on. In fact, the Konos, the sea elf, he's a warlock. He just learned that his patron lives in the Threefold Lake. Okay, so that's this all this planar stuff going on. It has to do with the Raven Queen. It has to do with all these different patrons. But if you can siphon off those souls, you can then maybe use them for your evil deeds. And that's in fact what the main villain in this game has been doing, siphoned off these souls, but then had them reborn as these weird blue goblins. Oh. And everyone who's been listening to the show knows that these blue goblins actually grow and incubate in these egg sacs, and then they're born, right? But there's the soul that is being used to drive that life force is stolen from a person or some kind of living being that already died and was waiting for their soul to be
so
at
when
rest.
So when she fixes
stolen.
them and they come back as their former selves, are they more or less being raised from the dead, or like are they revenants, or like
what happens normally is your soul, while it's waiting to be measured, is in the Soul Spire. The Soul Spire empties into the Threefold Lake, and your soul can flow down the river out of the Threefold Lake over to where the Raven Queen lives, the Palace of Fate, okay? And then she'll judge you or measure you, and then you get to go to your final resting place, whether that's on one plane or another, right? You don't get reincarnated and get brought back. If you were especially good or especially bad, she could choose to hold you in what amounts to a purgatory, right? So that you can be raised as a revenant when the time is right, and you can perform a task, and you can either earn goodness enough to be measured well, or you can still do bad things and be measured badly again. In fact, that's what they find out about Axley, or about Blacksley, Axley's counterpart. Blacksley is a revenant, right? And so they learned that, but they don't know anything about his task or how that happened. Which I won't spoil that part for you because
Well,
there's a lot more to that.
You hinted
that
at
you're
him
gonna.
being a revenant pretty heavily in one of the sessions I just listened to. So
Yeah, right, right. They find out for sure, and then they learn what his previous identity was when he was
nice.
immortal. So I'll leave that
Okay.
spoiler as well uh, to you, list. What's happening. So basically, all these blue goblins that they've been slaughtering because they've been being born and taking over everything and wreaking havoc, those actually contain the souls of people who were normal mortals, probably good people, that were just waiting for their soul to be measured while it was in the soul spire. Now the soul spire is being robbed by the main villain, right? And hey, don't be pulling no time schedule on me here. anyway, so that's what's happening, and that's what they find out, and then they get to Calport, and when they get into Calport, they are immediately told. So the other ship went first, Sharkface's ship, which also had sick people, so they got quarantined. They immediately get told, okay, here's the rules of the town, and it's got all these rules, and we know that you have a royal member of the royal family aboard, so we're taking you right now. You're going to come in. We're going to accompany you to the palace because we want the queens of Calport want to give you a formal, appropriate welcome for a royal, because the Lutrinian, the otter folk that's in my party, learned that they were of royal descent. And so that's what happened. So they go to the palace and they get sort of a royal welcome. And then they parlay and they have all of this, and they learned that one of the queens, her name is Delencia, Queen of Souls. Right. Well, I take that back. Her name is Delencia, but the party knows that name because when their dwarven friend told him of the history of King Ian Tarsus, the reason King Ian Tarsus has a history that everyone in the dwarven clans knows is that he stole Delencia's children, and whatever he got for that helped him destroy the tiefling race, because there's no tieflings in this setting. And the reason there's no tieflings is that the dragonborn and the dwarves destroyed the tiefling race. And part of the way they did that was King Ian Tarsus took the children from Delencia, whoever Delencia is. But now they get to this town thousands of years later, and the queen's name is Delencia. So they're like, what the hell is going on? Just like always. That's kind of how they end every session. Like, what the hell, Sam? What are you talking about?
Yeah, well, you've got a depth of lore and history in your head of this setting and this world that is dizzying sometimes.
Well, and I've said this before, and I, in fact, part of the debrief from the last episode, I asked them, like, is it too much? Because my sort of policy or motto or I guess theory, I don't know, is I need to give them as much information as possible, because it's that sort of thing. If you think you're being subtle, if you're a DM and you think you're being subtle, you're not giving the players enough for them to learn anything, right? You're being too subtle, because what's kind of subtle to you, since you already know everything, the players aren't going to catch it. They just won't, because they're different people. They don't have everything in their head already. So I give them probably too many clues and too many things to follow up on, because that way I can present them with a lot of different ways to learn the information.
Right.
And so sometimes it feels a little bit like overload, but my players, they basically said, no, we like it. We love the lore. We want to learn more about it. It's not overload. We just have to take a bazillion notes.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, and you have a few, exposition machines in your campaign as well. Like Tadius basically got an entire session to just give exposition and answer questions for a session.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah,
right.
no.
And the thing is, like, I do have a lot of exposition machines, but they're all unreliable narrators, right? Like Bolum, you're going to find out there's a spoiler about Bolum that's going to come up too, and I don't know if it's been in any of the released, but he can't go to certain planes, and so in my setting, artifacts are timeless, so time is not on a linear track for them. So they have parts of souls in them. That's what makes them alive or sentient, and they're timeless though. So sometimes Bolem, the sentient trident that Konos has, it doesn't realize what time period it's in. It thinks it's in a different time period.
Right.
So it gives him information and it's totally wrong because he's in the wrong time. So all of the ways to give them exposition are all unreliable. And the party has figured that out. So it's okay, right? Because they're like, well, that okay, but then maybe that's wrong. Like, so this
Right.
person said that, but that we're not sure that that's actually true for various reasons, A, B, C, D, E.
Right.
So yeah.
All right. Well, if my count is correct, you have now exceeded my time.
No
About 10 minutes ago, Steal Your Mind said you had 5 minutes left to match my time. So, that being said, Eugenio, thanks for coming on. There's no time for you.
Yeah, no, it's been a real pleasure. No, it's fine. I only have 5.5 seasons of a campaign to go through. We'll be done in no time.
Oh. Steal Your Mind says that wasn't to match my time, so never mind. I know your 15 minutes went off a long time ago, but and I know we're at an hour and 7 minutes of recording.
Hey, look, Eugenio is worth it. Okay,
he's absolutely worth it. We will stick around for him. Before we hear from Eugenio, though, I want to let people know of other ways they can support the show. You can go shopping at Amazon, like a million people are these days, or at DM's Guild for things like the interactive Tome of Strahd that Eugenio and I are both using. And if you go to those places through the links at thetomeshow.com, you get the exact same experience, the exact same prices, etc., but we get a small percentage of that, and I share that out with our contributors and what have you. Or if you want to support us directly, you can go to patreon.com/Tomeshow. That sounds right. The Tome Show? I don't know what my Patreon is now.
I don't know.
Yeah, well, there we are. But you can become a patron at Patreon and support the show directly, and that's always a nice thing to do. And I also always go to there every now, once or twice a month. I pop on there and I'm like, hey, don't forget about this thing, or I'm thinking about this. What do you, give me your feedback, and it helps guide the show that way as well. So there's that. Eugenio.
Yeah.
You got 15 minutes on the clock. You better not go over.
Blessings. Never.
Yeah, so tell us about 5 seasons of The Last Refuge. I have finished season 1. I'm way behind. I finished season 1.
Okay.
So
I can use character names and you'll know who I'm talking about for the most part. Okay. No, I for sure, if you want the full works of what goes on, just listen to the show. So lately what we've been doing with The Last Refuge, real quick overview of sort of the whole idea of the story. The 4 characters, who are 3 Aasimar and a Tiefling, woke up in the very first session somewhere they didn't recognize, no memory of why they were there, how they got there, what they're supposed to be doing. Seasons and seasons later, they have figured out that they're on this sort of old, forgotten world that has no gods, and they were sent by a god from the Forgotten Realms. They were sent by Denier to essentially sort of establish holy sites or anchor points for Denier, so that he could come to this world. He sort of is taking umbrage with everything that happened in the Forgotten Realms in the Second Sundering, and how he's not allowed to directly influence mortals as much as the gods used to be. And so he wants to have the players establish a way for him to come to this other world and become a god of this sort of barren world.
Said, fine, AO won't let me play in that sandbox. I'll come over here and make my own sandbox.
Exactly. This is riddled with spoilers, by the way, if anyone is listening to the show, enjoy. So they figured that out, that's how they got here, and that's why they were here, and went along their merry way, continuing their quest for Denier. But of course, things are never as simple as we would like them to be, and it turns out that there are several things that are gonna make problems for them in making this a happy place for Denier. One of them is that it appears that there is a rather powerful pit fiend who is sort of working at cross purposes to Denier, and has sent his own team of 3 Tiefling and an Aasimar to sort of work at cross purposes. So that's one thing. And then more recently, they have discovered that these sort of they were originally told, the players were originally told that they were temples, these ancient temples that are sort of nodes of incredible magical power that have basically been lying dormant for centuries. And they were supposed to consecrate each of those to Denier, and that would give him an anchor point in this world. What they have relatively recently discovered is that the reason that this world is barren is because these magical nodes would cause this sort of world-destroying beast, and that's all they know about it at this point, to awaken once every millennium or so, and just wipe out civilization. And humanity and civilization would have to start again every 1,000 years or so. And so if they're going to go around activating and consecrating these nodes to Denier, that's going to reactivate them and hasten the return of the beast. So, you know, we've had some very exciting, thrilling moments that were super fun to adjudicate as a DM, where, like, at one point, the one character, the tiefling, who happens to be the cleric of Denier, decided in the moment that they were there at their first node and they were finally going to consecrate it to Denier, and he was like, actually, I don't think this is a good idea, and didn't do it. And so he lost all his cleric. Like, Denier was like, okay, cool, bye. So he's not a cleric anymore. So that was like a whole thing. So their mission now, all of that is to say that their mission now, they have decided, is not in fact to consecrate these magical nodes to allow Denier to come to this world, but in fact to protect the world from both the beast ever coming back, and by extension, the tieflings and the one Azamar, who are trying to consecrate these nodes in the name of their pit fiend father. So that's.
So wait, can I interrupt you for a second?
Please, yeah, oh please.
So when that PC could no longer be a cleric of Denier, what did they do?
So we spent a few episodes that spanned, a chunk of time. It was 6 or 9 months or something, ultimately in-game time, where they retrained. And to get to the end of the story, they are now a Bard Ranger multi-class.
Okay.
But we spent some really cool episodes where, like, the player learned tracking from the monk in the party who has the Outlander background, and learned archery from the rogue who is mostly a ranged fighter. And we really tried to, like, weave the story in about how they were retraining, because we didn't want that. Whether or not other people are listening to this campaign, that sort of thing feels like a big story beat, right? And I didn't want to cheat the players out of the chance to dive into it. And I also didn't want it to be like a non-issue of like, oh, you're not a cleric anymore, so take some levels in Ranger.
You're just suddenly you're a fighter.
Right, exactly.
And you were doing stuff like that even back in season 1. Like, you do the sort of like, time goes by, let's do a montage sort of what happens and sort of thing. You do that pretty well, so I can see how
we've been doing it for a while. I have fallen out of forcing them to do it every time they level up, which I wanted to do back at the beginning, and I still kind of do it. I do have them explain, what does a level up mean to you? What did you do to gain these new powers? And that's been super fun for them too. I think because it has, well, one, it helps them solidify in their brains what their new abilities are at each level, which has been great. But also it's fun for them to just sort of play and figure out like what these game mechanics mean to them in terms of the story of the world. So they've decided this, they've gone around and they have, they've encountered their tiefling counterparts and they've clashed and they've done all of these things. Where we are now is that they have, let's complicate things more. So the surface is mostly non-human adjacent humanoid species, right? On their little starter island, because I'm a video gamer too, and that seemed like a good way to get into things. So on their little starter island, it's populated with kobolds, orcs, and yuan-ti, right? And another island is populated with goblins, gnolls, and something else that they haven't encountered yet. Don't remember what it is. And so it's always sort of been a question, where are the humans? Where are the elves? Did they ever exist in this world? Did they not? They found evidence of them. They have found out that humanity, not meaning just humans, but humans and human-adjacent races, about 1,000 years ago, the last time the beast came, some particularly powerful mages had secretly created a contingency plan for humanity, and they've all escaped underground, and a large part of civilization has been living underneath the surface for 1,000 years. And as part of going down there, these mages that sort of set up this underground society made sure to ingrain in the people down there that the surface is danger. Isolation, hiding down here is how we stay safe. The beast only ravages the surface. We've never had any evidence of the beast. Maybe it might come from underground somewhere, but it doesn't burrow down and destroy underneath the surface.
How well do you know the Forgotten Realms as a setting?
Well, if you're about to say that this is like something in the Forgotten Realms, then not as well as I thought.
Well, you know how everything in 5th edition is over on the Sword Coast, right?
Yeah.
On the very opposite end of the Forgotten Realms, there is a location called Deep Imiskar, where a bunch of wizard civilization did very similar. They went underground, they sealed themselves in a magical vault, and then it was just during the 4th edition era that they had finally opened that vault for the first time in like 100 or whatever years. And so they were starting to come into but it was like this push and pull within their own civilization of like, but should we be going out, or should we be sort of cloistering and protecting ourselves? So you might look there for inspiration, was my only thought, if you were looking to flesh some things out.
I definitely will, because that is actually exactly what's happened. So with everything that's been going on at the surface, there's a sort of rebel group underground that has been very secretly helping the party in small ways, either giving them information or giving them resources or whatever. And the tieflings found out about this. And so by extension, the tieflings found out about the underground society. And so the tieflings are currently ensconced on a different island, and they raided the underground civilization on that island. And it was real bad. They spent a lot of time summoning in devils to this world, and they just sent this huge horde of them. The beginning of season 6, which is where we are now, was basically started with the party going to the northern island and helping with an evacuation. So it was rounds and rounds and rounds and rounds and rounds of combat of them just holding off devil hordes while civilians escaped through a portal to their home island, essentially. So the cat's out of the bag, right? There are people in the world below who are meddling with the surface. There are surface dwellers that are underground, which hasn't happened in 1,000 years, right? For all intents and purposes. And society is just sort of freaking out. So the Enclave, which is what we call the group of rebels that have been helping them, have all been arrested. The characters have been served a writ of banishment. But because this society is A, super isolationist, and B, super communal, everything that they do sort of has to come from a decision of the majority of everyone. So we have this period of time before there is a sort of trial for the Enclave and for the characters, where the characters just sort of have some time to do as they will in this city. Because, quite frankly, the Enclave, or rather the officials of the city, they don't think they're a direct threat. They don't think that the players are going to go out and murder civilians on the streets, right? And if the PCs decide to flee and run away from their trial, well, cool, then we don't have to worry about the writ of banishment. They're gone, right? So they've sort of been given the run of the city for a little while until this trial goes on. And what we've done for the last couple of months is they were essentially given the advice from one of the Enclave leaders that they should maybe go out and just try and show the people of this city that they are not as scary as they have been led to believe, that maybe isolationism is not the protection that they have been led to believe for 1,000 years, that maybe the people of the world below don't have to go up to the surface and fight, but maybe it's okay if some people want to. And so that's what they're doing. And the last couple of months, essentially the party decided that they wanted to split up to cover as much ground as possible. Every DM's dream. But actually what it's done is it's given us this super cool opportunity for me to have one-on-one episodes with each of the players, and we've brought in a guest to represent sort of a group of people here in the city that they run into and talk to and try and convince to sort of bring them over to their side for the upcoming trial. And it's been really cool. And it's definitely something you could do in a home game around the table. But it's been super fun because we did this, it all happened to coincide scheduling wise with sort of the beginning of stay-at-home orders, and so I was like, well, I've got all the time in the world, so let me bring all these guests in and let me, schedule all of these recording sessions with each of the players individually, and it's been a ton of fun. We had one player, we had Bria meet a school teacher that was played by TK Johnson from Tales from the Mists, and that was a hilarious sort of butting of heads because the school teacher was very much indoctrinated into the isolationist theme, and it was fascinating to watch Taryn, who plays Bria, just like go up against someone who is the exact opposite of her and figure out how to role play this conversation without offending the NPC, but get them on their side. Bizdira, who is our monk, went off and ended up saving some miners who were mining a stalactite and who were, their scaffolding had broken and fallen, and she saved them from certain death and managed to, talk to them about outside help and how it is necessary. And who am I forgetting? Kit. Oh, Kit met... Kit is our druid, and so she went out and found the farms, air quotes, farms, and met an artificer who invented a way to mimic sunlight, even though this person didn't really know what sunlight was. They just knew that it made their plants grow better when the light sort of did this thing across the cavern. And so that was sort of a fun little one-on-one thing where they learned about each other's sort of connection to nature and all of that. And then today I just recorded Flick, who is our tiefling bard ranger, ran into this person who who basically is just like, well, the world's ending, so nothing matters, just the ultimate nihilist, and got to try and convince them that, like, we can help you. The world doesn't have to be ending, but you have to let us. So that's sort of where we are now, and it's been a lot of fun. There has been no combat in any of these episodes. And my players like their combat, but we've done none of it. We've had a few instances where they've run up against things that were dangerous, but I told the guests there's no need for you to have full-blown character sheets and combat abilities. We won't be doing combat, and so I forced them to sort of figure out ways out of combat without, rolling initiative and rolling to attack and all of this stuff, which has been really good for all of us, I think. It was also a great exercise for me in, like, finding, which I have not done here, but finding a way to concisely explain the world and the circumstances to the guests that are coming in.
You've been more concise than either Sam or I at this point.
I mean, fair. And I have like a little one sheet on Google Docs that I send them that we've sort of, my story consultant and I have sort of honed down, but it's been such a change in the way that we approach our campaign for the last couple months, and it's been really fun. Yeah.
So is the next thing then the trial, where you bring in these different factions and they speak on their behalf or whatever, or is there anything in between, or what are you thinking?
So the original plan was to have each of them do one set of these episodes, and each of them has essentially 2 episodes with their guest. And then to do a couple of episodes of, like, bringing the group back together, updating each other on how things went, and then going out and do another set. What we have discovered is, in retrospect, incredibly obvious, which is that D&D is a game about social interaction, to hang out with your group of friends and doing things together and teamwork. And while this has been super fun, I think we as the players and also our listeners miss the group dynamic quite a bit. And so what we're going to do is we're going to have our reunion episodes. We're going to do a very shortened version because I already have Kit's second set of episodes recorded with Celeste Konowich, so I don't want to shortchange that and not put it out there. So Kit's going to get an episode. Bria and Bizdira cannot be trusted to go out on their own. So Bria, Bizdira, and Flick are going to go together for their last Goodwill tour. Okay. So we'll cut the amount of time it was going to take in half. And then we're going to do the trial, which is sort of the big question mark for me, which is, my story consultant is a lawyer and has very strong opinions about how the trial can go, and I love him very much, but God, those will be some of the most boring hours of D&D if we do it that way. All due respect to him because he's wonderful. But.
So, I don't know if you've thought of this, but part of me is listening to you've had him individually sort of go out, woo different factions to sort of come back and help them with the trial. I wonder if there isn't an opportunity after they come back together, they have their reunion, whatever, have yet another faction make an appearance, but this one is coming to them offering to help because they want something. Like there's something where the players could provide, shifting the balance of power in their favor through the course of this. Like, hey, here's some secret information about the judge. You could totally burn them down, and then we get to fill the power vacuum or whatever. Something like that. That might be kind of interesting, and it's a twist on what you've been doing for a month. So, Sam.
Yeah. Or the information that they have is from an ancient account of the previous history of that group of people where they did live above, and it had some of the real benefits of being above, and lamented, maybe it was written right after they all went underground, and it's people lamenting certain things they lost that then they could help, the party could use that information to help convince people we need to go. We need to go. We were trying to help you see this is not a bad thing we're doing. This is neutral. We could try to help you regain some things that your culture lost when you made this shift eons ago, or however long ago it was in the setting, right? Like that kind of information, which would, to the people who have a vested interest in keeping the status quo, that would be very dangerous information. So maybe it's been hidden away. Maybe the people in power actually do know it, but they've been hiding it from people. And that's what the group that Jeff is talking about comes and tells the party. Right? That, hey, we know where some information is, right? And it's directly related to the people that they're interacting with. So
nice.
Yeah.
One of the things that's great, and one of the things that I actually listened to, I guess it must have been whatever the last Behind the DM Screen that was released, and you all talked about, I think it was that. Anyway, it was some Tome Show thing where you, I think, Sam, were talking about exactly what you mentioned earlier about not being subtle as a DM, and I realize I have tried to be subtle in some ways, and it hasn't. I mean, the proof is in the episodes, right? They have no idea what's going on about a couple of these things.
Yeah.
And one of the things that's actually the biggest mystery for them that I realize now is the time to start pulling the threads together is about the beast itself. And so maybe in this cache of information about, what they've lost, there are also accounts of what it actually is.
Right.
And so that's the way that they can start, because they're starting to believe that the dang thing doesn't even exist.
Right.
It's myth, that it's a it was a tool by the ancient civilizations to sort of keep people in line. They have all kinds of theories, which
it's
are all lovely, but
right.
So that's another thing that could be included in that cache. I like this.
So I have a couple other comments too. Like, it's funny that you say you don't do any combat, because that's one of the things. And Jeff has mentioned that a lot, because I started realizing my D&Debreif group, we've had maybe 5 combats in a year. Right.
Oh, wow.
The year of meeting every other week, roughly every other week, we've had maybe 5 combats. And so I refer to the stream as a sort of low combat D&D game, even though there's nothing special about the players, right? It's they didn't make the characters specially for no combat or whatever. We didn't know that was going to happen. It just is what it is, right? And so I find it really interesting that you mentioned that you also don't do combat. My second comment is, it's funny because for me, because my D&Debreif game, we haven't met in real life. We actually were going to at a con later this year, but it got canceled because of the pandemic. But we haven't met in real life, so we only have the online experience with each other, and that actually has served us really well during the pandemic, because for us it's the same as it's always been in terms of what happens when we meet and we play. I feel like we would feel it a lot more if we were meeting in person previously and now we switch to online for the stream. That would be really, really hard, I think. So I feel
we made that transition way back, like maybe 6 months into the podcast, because a couple of our cast members moved to the other side of the country, and we wanted to keep playing. But it's served us well, not just now, but me and one of the other players, we're actors and we do gigs all over the country, and so it's allowed us to keep playing together. But yeah, I can imagine that transition, which I guess, Jeff, you had to do, in the middle of mid stride would be tough.
Right.
Yeah.
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 Well, I hope you've got
Yeah.
some good ideas there. Do you have any other questions or things you want us to talk about? Okay.
No, it was just, the only other thing is sort of how to do the trial, but I think if I give them this opportunity to either work or not work, right, with this other group, then that makes the event of the trial have some stakes beyond just like, here are the witnesses, here is the verdict, like, right? Either they have this information and they use it, or they don't, and then this other group is upset with them, and maybe they come in and do something during the trial, right? It gives it some adventure, right, to a court proceeding.
Yeah. Have you considered actually making the beast a boogeyman that doesn't exist? Like, do you know if you've done that?
I have thought about it. So what the beast is has changed twice since I started the show, and there is nothing to say that it can't change again. And I kind of think I have learned to be much more flexible with my story and sort of meta arcs since I started doing this campaign with them, and so right now it is a possibility. There are, for reasons, there are things that will be decided based on both how the trial goes and presuming it goes the way of the PCs, which based on these 4 guest episodes, I think it probably will, what they do next. Because they've got a couple of options, some of which will definitely tip the beast's hand sooner rather than later, in which case I'll probably go with what I've already got planned out. But if they give me some time and really hammer home the sort of boogeyman idea, I don't hate it, and there are ways that I've started to think about to make that a possibility.
Yeah. I call that strategy reactive DMing, because I do the same thing. Because like Jeff mentioned, I have a lot of lore in my head. That's true, but the good part of that is that I don't have this lore in my head so that I can pour it out onto them. I have it in my head so that I can react appropriately to what they do. And depending on how they respond and how they move through the world and who they interact with and what they do and who they make friends with and who they make enemies with, that's what ends up determining, right? Like that's what ends up determining whether that thing is a boogeyman or a real thing, right? Like, So I call that reactive DMing. I really like that style because it ends up feeling for me more organic as the game goes on, because that means the players and their PC choices actually have an effect on what's happening.
Well, and that's where our previous conversation always comes back to bite me, because I always say too much about reacting or changing things, and it ruins this. Not always, but on occasion I have said too much. It's like, oh well, like that was an interesting conversation I had with my group after the session, but it also kind of took us out of the immersion of the moment. So
that is how I try and run it. And when I run games in the Forgotten Realms, there are the Sword Coast and a few other specific places, Thay and some other places I do have a lot of facility with, and so I can do it that way. I always sort of feel bad giving that advice to other DMs, because I recognize that like not everyone has the kind of brain that is going to store all of that setting lore in a very easy way, like it sounds like we have. But man, if you can do it, does it make it A, exciting, and B, quite frankly, so much easier.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a style. It's not the style. It's not
absolutely
the best. That's just how I prefer things. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, thank you, gentlemen. That's that actually solves a lot of questions that I had for how to get to the end of this season. So very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know that we have a firm idea of how to run the trial, though.
Well, hold on. I also want to get Dan Dillon's other comment on the air, which is the other group wants their agent in the judge's position either by having the group discredit them or by assassinating them during the trial and pinning it on the group. So you can actually, instead of having them necessarily come to the group and say, here's what we can give you, or well, here's what can you give us, have them be also sort of playing the party against the middle, right?
Absolutely.
So interesting stuff.
Yeah. Nice.
Credit where it's due. Dan guessed it a long time ago and played one of the first sort of members of the Enclave that the players met.
Nice.
Sort of.
All right. I think at an hour and 35 minutes into this episode, it might be our longest behind the DM screen ever, but it's been a lot of fun. The chat room has been really active, and it's been fun bouncing back and forth. Like Sam and I are sitting here back and forth while you're chatting. Sometimes we're laughing at the things that you're saying, and sometimes it has nothing to do with what you're saying because the chat room is mocking my verbosity and what have you. So... in any case,
well, we've set a new record now, so Mike has a lot to live up to.
Well, don't set that challenge for him.
I'm so sorry, but also I wash my hands.
Speaking of the chat room and all that, we are streaming our episode recordings, unedited, raw, with all of the warts on. If anybody wanted to watch them, they are at twitch.tv/Tome Show. You can follow us there, and usually I tweet out about it. The Twitter is the Tome Show. A few hours before, and then as we go live, I always tweet out about it there too. So. So you can hang out there if you'd rather watch it later after the fact. Also completely raw and edited, the exact same video. It's available on YouTube. Sometimes the next day, sometimes a week or two later. Right now I'm actually a couple episodes behind, so every time I sit down to record, I send over the last recording that I did, or the whatever one is in line. So it's there as well. And if you want to have a conversation with us in a little bit more intimate way, like many of the people in our chat room have done, we have a Discord channel that's been active for, a month or two now, Sam? Something like that. So if you, and if you want the link to the Discord channel, because it rotates, it changes, you can either email thetomeshow@gmail.com, or you can tweet at the Tome Show, and I'll send out whatever the latest link is, and we will get that to you there. So I think we're going to have to call that the end of the episode.
Fair.
My wife is almost certainly in bed at this point, and I got to hope that she's not asleep yet. So I'm sorry, honey, I'm coming soon. I'm on my way. All right. So that's the end of Behind the DM Screen for June of 2020. And thanks everybody for joining us. And thank you, Eugenio, for being on the episode. If people want to find you, you are at DM Jazzy Hands. And is it D&D Last Refuge? That's the Twitter.
D&D Last Refuge.
Is that also?
That's the Twitter and the Insta, and it's also our website, dndlastrefuge.com.
There you go. So you can listen to the entirety of that as well. So it's mixed in with my... I'm at the end of season 1 of Last Refuge, and I am at the beginning of season 2 of Critical Role, and they're all in the same playlist. So I'm sort of... They're all filtering in and out together. So. Good
for you. Our episodes are way shorter.
They are way shorter. That's true. No, that's how I caught up so quickly on yours. I'd get through, I'd go for a run and get through 3 episodes, and it was great.
Yeah.
All right.
We try.
All right. That's where we're gonna say goodbye. So say goodbye, guys.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.
And that's the end of the recording. Thank you, stream. This has been fun. I hope you've had a good time.
Thanks, everybody.
It's been a fun and lively chat. So I appreciate everybody being on. So goodbye to the stream. It was lovely having you.
Yes, it was.